Welcome back, DPRV TV viewers. It's Chris Nichols here. What is shift photography and how do shift lenses work? They give you a lot of control over perspective, and I'm going to show you how to do that. We've got a really cool tool to do it today. We have the brand new Laowa 15mm shift lens, the widest full frame shift lens on the market. Should be a lot of fun. Stick with us and we'll see if this niche photography suits you. I think we're all familiar with the concept of perspective, and when you look at something like a building, for example, from below, the lines converge up to the top to a vanishing point. And although it looks natural, because that's the way that we see the world, sometimes you want to get rid of that sense of perspective and straighten those lines out. And that's where a shift lens can really help you out. Now, normally, if I want to shoot a building and not get that convergence, I would have to get higher up and shoot straight towards the building. But with a shift lens, what I can do instead is stay on the ground, shift the lens, and it basically undoes that effect. Now, I know that we can do this in Photoshop as well to some degree, but keep in mind, when we are making those modifications in Photoshop, it's a digital effect. There is some damage done, and we often are going to lose parts of our frame, our composition, and resolution. Here, the lens does the work, and I get the full resolution of the camera. So here you can see our frame basically with the building as we would see it. Now, albeit through a wide angle lens, not our own eyes, but you can see that natural convergence. Now, here's the shot where we correct for it. And although I can't completely get rid of it, it does make a big difference to how it appears on frame. Now, shifting isn't always about getting rid of convergence. You can also make it even more extreme. So check out this last example here. I've shifted the lens in the opposite direction, changed my composition, and now I can make that sense of convergence, distance, and perspective even more dynamic. So here's an example just to show that often when you're using a shift lens, it's not about huge extreme corrections. It's not about shooting skyscrapers and trying to get those converging lines to spread apart. Sometimes you're just standing street level. You got a mural behind me here, and I just want to do a little bit of shift. I'm only going about 6mm of shift here, and that's just straightening out those edges, making things look a little bit more natural and not getting that, subtle as it may be, convergence towards the top of the frame. So we're going to use this horizontal scene just to illustrate some of the effects that are happening with a shift lens. Now, first off, when I shift my lens to the right and to the left, I want you guys to notice the composition changes, but my sense of perspective does not. I'm not changing that sense of converging lines and vanishing point and distance. What I can do, though, is take a shot here on the shifted right, take another shot here shifted left, stitch those together and get a really nice panorama, and the sense of perspective will be the same for both shots. But the magic of perspective control really happens when you shift the lens and then change your point of view with the lens. So, for example, right now I've got the lens shifted hard to the right, but I'm pointing the camera here to the left, and you can see that that Legion building looks somewhat closer in the image, and my sense of perspective isn't that extreme. I'm not getting that far off distance like an ultra wide angle lens would give. However, if I shift the lens hard to the left and I recompose that shot, now look at that. I'm getting similar elements in my photograph, but the Legion building goes way, way off into the distance, and I really exaggerate that sense of distance and perspective. So shifting a lens and perspective control all has to do with manipulating the lens and your point of view. Now, fit and finish on the Laowa 15mm, very high end. Everything's machined very well. Everything feels very solid. Got a nice distance indicator here showing me how many millimeters of shift I've got. Got a nice locking pin on there, and I can rotate the shift mechanism around in 15-degree elements, so I can pretty much shift in whatever plane I want to. The other thing I like here is the front lens cap. It's a bayonet locking style, not a felt-lined, friction fit, so I like that. I don't feel like I'm going to lose it, and it protects that bulbous front element. I do want to say, though, that front element means there's not going to be any filter usage on this lens, and that might be unfortunate if you did want to use this as an affordable ultra-wide landscape lens. You can, but without filters. Last thing I want to mention as well, I'm using this on a Canon EF mount. That's what they sent us. I've got the adapter to go into my Canon EOS R here, but there aren't any electrical connections on this particular lens, so the camera's not going to know what aperture I'm shooting at. It's not going to show up in the EXIF data. Manual focus, of course, so just keep that all in mind. Auto exposure seems to be working pretty good. I'm relying on it, but I wouldn't use it if I was trying to stitch multiple images together. So we found some lights here to do a bokeh test on this Laowa lens. It does have a very close focusing distance, below 0.2 meters. So if you get close enough, you can do some neat perspective shots, and you can also get a fairly soft background. However, notice what happens when we stop the lens down. The Laowa has a very simple pentagonal aperture system, so you're not going to get nice round bokeh when you stop down the aperture. Everything looks like little stars. That's kind of cute, but you might not like it in your photography. But keep in mind, here's the thing. Bokeh is rarely going to be an issue on this lens because most of the time, considering how wide it is, considering that we're mostly shooting architectures and landscape with it, we're focusing far away, shooting f8 or f11, and you're just not going to see any out of focus areas. I don't think I've ever used this tilt screen so much in my entire life. I don't know how you would do this stuff without it. It's been so essential today. On SLRs, people must have just hated themselves. Tilt and shifters must have just been the most miserable people ever. Now, we haven't had any sunlight today, but I'm curious to see how this lens will do for sun stars if you were going to use it for landscape and sunny conditions. That might still happen, but we did get some nice bright specular highlights here in the lighting in this alley. So I tried it here, f16, we're getting diffraction, but you can see when the pinpoints are small, we actually get quite beautiful sun stars. Long beams, very clean, so I'm very impressed with that. We're gonna call it a day because our light here today, it's just going to shift. And we wanna check these files on the computer, have a look at resolution, and we do also wanna compare this against a similar tilt shift lens. So, see you soon. Okay, so we're back and I've had a chance to look at the files, and really I was kind of wondering, how is this lens going to do in the sharpness department considering its relatively affordable cost? And to be honest, when I first looked at the pictures, I wasn't blown away. They looked a little bit soft, even though we're shooting on a tripod, so I thought I'd give it some context. I got a Canon TSE tilt shift 17mm, probably the closest kind of lens to the Laowa. And we did some shots here, and yeah, if you look in the centers, wide open or stop down, you will see that the Canon is going to be the sharper of the two lenses. But it's not all doom and gloom, because honestly, when we looked in the corners on the shift, I actually feel the Laowa held up better wide open or stop down. So the Laowa gives us better overall even performance, but the Canon is distinctly sharper, especially in the center. And I feel like if I'm on a high resolution body like the Canon R5, that does pay dividends, it's worth it. However, if I'm on a 24 megapixel sensor camera, or I just want more flat, even performance across the whole image, this Laowa has a lot going for it. Now keep in mind the Canon TSE does also tilt, and that's a huge benefit. It lets us play with our depth of field, and if you guys are interested in that, well, let us know. That might be a video for another time. But it also is more than twice the price, and it's only marginally faster at its wider aperture. So keep that in mind. I think the Laowa still does give very good value for the dollar. So we have a pretty affordable lens here, but who is it going to please and who is it not going to please? You know, landscape photographers typically want to do big enlargements. They want high resolution bodies and lenses that can deliver those high resolution results. And honestly, that's where I think the Laowa falls apart a little bit. So you might not like that, although it does give you really nice wide angle coverage on a full frame body for a good price. But if I was a real estate photographer or architectural photographer, this lens is awesome. Being able to correct your perspective, still get decent resolution. I mean, this stuff is going in brochures or on the web. You don't have high resolution requirements for that. This makes a ton of sense. Or for a street photographer who wants that unusual wide angle and wants to be able to correct perspectives, personally, I had so much fun just shooting and not having to deal with buildings always falling away into a vanishing point. Hopefully this video helps you guys decide if this product is right for you. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe to the channel. We'll see you soon.